Mbona kama imesimama hivi?
Victor?
Yes, how are you?
Hello, Victor?
Hello?
Very well. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. You can hear me?
Hello, can you hear me? Ah, great.
Yes.
Yes, I can.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let's wait
Yeah,
for.
so maybe tujipange for a minute or two. I'll only take a few minutes to I'll only take like 5 minutes to do the prayer, then introduce the program, then you proceed. After that, then you can leave for me. Internet lost.
What? Did you say that?
Hello, Rita.
Yes.
Rita, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
It's showing red here on our end.
Previously, was it showing green?
Yes.
Just realizing this. Hello, Rita.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Na iko full hapa.
Think about it. That's muscle memory. Muscle memory lives in the brain, not the muscles. Your brain controls everything your muscles do, and it does this by activating specific neural pathways for each and every movement. These are functional pathways, neurons working together to achieve a goal. Say you're learning how to shoot a free throw. If it's your first time doing it, you don't yet have a pathway for that movement in your brain. You need to create it. Let's use an analogy to look at what's happening in the brain during this time. When you're first learning, your brain is like a forest full of trees and dense foliage with no clear pathway between point A and point B. As you learn the mechanics of shooting a free throw, you create a trail through the forest. Now you can shoot the free throw because you've created that pathway in your brain. You probably don't make many shots because it's so new. The pathway isn't very clear yet. In order to improve your free throw, you need to refine and strengthen the free throw pathway in your brain. The way you do that is through practice. Practice gradually widens the trail through the trees, turning it into a dirt road between A and B. You're starting to get pretty good now. You're making more free throws than not. You don't have to think about the mechanics as much. That's because the pathway gets stronger after each practice rep, and you've done a lot of reps. With even more practice, the dirt road turns into a paved road connecting A and B, allowing information to be transmitted at a faster rate. Now you're a 70% free throw shooter, and when you step to the line, you don't even have to think about it. Eventually, with enough practice, what started as a trail has become a full-blown highway. Now you're a master, draining almost every free throw, and the movement is completely second nature. Scientists call this plasticity, and its innate ability to create and strengthen connections between neurons. These connections are the path through the forest. Halo Sport optimizes this process by temporarily increasing plasticity in your brain that controls movement, so that your brain can create and strengthen these pathways faster than you would otherwise. We call this hyperplasticity. When you practice or train in this state, you're able to write muscle memory more effectively, allowing you to get that much more out of your practice. In terms of our analogy, Halo Sport helps you build super highways of muscle memory at an accelerated rate. It's not magic, it's neuroscience.
If you're a business owner, 3D character videos are the best way to grow your business and make more sales.
The brain when you learn.
Okay,
In
I
order
think
to learn
it's
anything, math,
So then-
foreign language, guitar, or how to dribble basketball, you need to create and strengthen your brain. Think about shooting a free throw. Know that feeling when you've got it down and don't even have to think about it? That's muscle memory. Here's the thing. Muscle memory lives in the brain, not the muscles. Your brain controls everything your muscles do, and it does this by activating specific neural pathways for each and every movement. These are functional pathways, neurons working together to achieve a goal. Say you're learning how to shoot a free throw. If it's your first time doing it, you don't yet have a pathway for that movement in your brain. You need to create it. Let's use an analogy to look at what's happening in the brain during this time. When you're first learning, your brain is like a forest full of trees and dense foliage, with no clear pathway between point A and point B.
And it seems to be breaking through it up.
Free throw, you create a trail through the forest. Now you can shoot the free throw because you've created that pathway in your brain. But you probably make many shots because it's so new. The pathway isn't very clear yet. In order to improve your free throw, you need to refine and strengthen the free throw pathway in your brain. The way you do that is through practice. Practice gradually widens the trail through the trees, turning it into a dirt road between A and B. You're starting to get pretty good now. You're making more free throws than not. You don't have to think about the mechanics as much. That's because the pathway gets stronger after each practice rep, and you've done a lot of reps. With even more practice, the dirt road turns into a paved road connecting A and B, allowing information to be transmitted at a faster rate. Now you're a 70% free throw shooter, and when you step up to the line, you don't even have to think about it. Eventually, with enough practice, what started as a trail has become a full-blown highway. Now you're a master, draining almost every free throw, and the movement is completely second nature. Scientists call this plasticity, and it's your brain's innate ability to create and strengthen connections between neurons. These connections are the path through the forest. Optimizes this process by temporarily increasing plasticity in the part of your brain that controls movement, so that your brain can create and strengthen these pathways faster than you would otherwise. We call this hyperplasticity. When you practice or train in this state, you're able to write muscle memory more effectively, allowing you to get that much more out of your practice. In terms of our analogy, Halo Sport helps you build super highways of muscle memory at an accelerated rate. It's not magic, it's neuroscience.
conversation. I see you're still joining. Let's keep joining. Hello, I can see Remsi Transition Network. I can see you around. Karibuni sana. Let's call everybody on board. We're having some technical issues from Daktari side, but no worries. I'll still proceed. We have amazing content stored for you. So if you give us time to, if you deliberately decide to follow up, you will learn something or two to improve your grades. You go back to school for the second term. So my name is Toita Katero. I'm an associate at the Transformative Thinking Center. I work with Dr. Patrick Nyaga. You have not seen me out here because I normally work on the background, but today I've decided to, via the opportunity that Dr. has given me, to come and share here. Now, first things first, today's conversation is titled "How to Remember What You Study." I know I was a student, of course, at one time, and I remember the struggle one goes through in trying to have to remember what you're learning. And I see Dr. has joined us, but we proceed. I'm sure he'll say hi at some point. And so allow me to go straight to the conversation. I think time is very well spent. And so in today's conversation, we are going to look at why we forget, how we forget, and how to fix all that. And I want us to think of our brain as a giant library. When you study, you're not just reading a book, you're writing it into the shelves of your brain or of your mind. But if you just throw the book on the floor, let's say you're cramming, how are you supposed to find it later? And I would want us to break down memory into three: encoding, storage, and retrieval. Encoding, storage, and retrieval. So encoding is where you're putting information in. Storage is where now you're storing what you've put in, and retrieval is where you're pulling out what you need. Maybe you're in a group discussion, maybe you're doing a cut, maybe you're even now doing the national exam. Now that's where now retrieval comes in. So now, to understand how to remember what you study, we have to first of all understand the concept of forgetting. And I know Daktari doesn't like the word forgetting because he has told me countless times there is nothing like forgetting. Forgetting is a scam. Everything you study is always somewhere. But for today's conversation, allow me to use the word forgetting. And I want to take us back to a gentleman called Herman with a double N. And he was super curious about this one thing called memory, specifically how we forget things. This is back in Germany in the 1800s. Now he decided to test scientifically how this whole memory thing works. So what he did, he came up with words that don't make sense. He just he took syllables and just came up with absurd words. An example: BOK, B-O-K, Z-I-D, L-E-M, dark, duke, deck, just some non-existent words. Try random. That way, he will not accidentally remember them because they sounded familiar. Then he memorized these fake words and tested himself to see how much he remembered. After 20 minutes, after an hour, after a day, after a week, he repeated this for months. Now, what he found was pretty wild. We forget really fast at first. Like within a day, you can lose over 50% of what you learn. But then the rate of forgetting slows down. That's what we call the forgetting curve. Now, this point, along with you, my screen, I show you how the forgetting curve looks like. The forgetting curve. So the forgetting curve. Oh, yes, this is the forgetting curve. When you look at the forgetting curve, let me bring the title on board. When you look at the forgetting curve, memory retained versus time after study, you see that it comes down very fast, especially on the onset. Then it almost comes and becomes steady towards the bottom, but towards when after the time you've studied, the graph comes down and down and down and down. And if you don't get yourself to revise and to review what you study, this graph can almost even go to negative, which now negative now is what we maybe call forgetting, because now you've gone past the duration of study, and now if everything you have been studying, now you can almost not remember anything. So now that is how the forgetting curve looks like. And so this gentleman called Herman came up with that. Now his big takeaway was this: if you review stuff regularly, especially soon after learning it, you'll remember it way better. That's how spaced repetition works. Something a lot of study apps use today if you go to Play Store. Now, later in the webinar, I will share what the curve looks like for the same forgetting curve, but now when you incorporate reviewing what you study. Now, let me give a practical example. Let's give a scenario of two students. Let's say Alex and John. And both Alex and John are in the chemistry class. And maybe today they learn about the mole concept. Now, John is the one who learns something, says, I'm okay, wait for the exam. But slowly he discovers he cannot even remember what mole meant, the definition of mole, of the mole concept. He cannot even remember one equation. He's totally in the dark. On the other side, we have a student called John. John, similar to Alex, similar to John, he's very attentive in class, he has questions and everything. But Alex, before he goes to sleep, he goes through his notes. He takes a review of what he has been studying. He tries to formulate questions for himself. He tries to teach his deskmate what he has learned in like 10 to 15 minutes. What you will now notice is that the forgetting curve of Alex is not as steep as the forgetting curve of John, because John is continually reviewing what he studies. And this is what we are talking about. This is what you need to do. You need to put yourself in a position of forgetting curve not being so steep. Yeah, but I will not preempt myself that later. Now, what does reviewing do to your mind? What reviewing does to the curve? Because I've already showed you what the forgetting curve looks like. So now we want to see, when we start reviewing, what are we actually targeting on the curve? So understand this. Instead of forgetting 70%, remember we have just said, you almost lose 70% of what you learn by default. This is not to say you're a bad student. This is not to say that maybe you have some issues mentally. No, this is nature. This is just how the brain is, because the brain is processing so many things in any given day. It cannot store everything, at least at the front end of the brain that Charlie calls the conscious brain. Everything cannot be stored there. Some things go to the back end. And so those things going to the back end, they are like the 70-80%. But you see, for you to use something, it has to be on the conscious brain. It has to come closer to memory. And so now what reviewing does to your brain, it brings things closer to your conscious brain, so that when you need it, you don't have to struggle so much. So memory is not just about learning once. It's about reminding your brain, hey, listen up, brain, and keep it close. And so allow me to now show you how the curve looks like if you're going through or if you're reviewing what you study. That's how the graph looks like. When you consistently start reviewing what you study, what you notice is, number one, the curve is not as steep. And the baseline is so high from the ground. So if you study the moles concept on a Monday, on a Friday, you can easily do a cut and you will averagely perform well, because whatever you studied on Monday is still active in your brain. So you've seen the difference. The first curve is very steep. Everything is, you're almost what the Bible says, they were making money, but they were putting money in pants with empty, with torn holes. So you're taking money, putting in a pocket, in a potea. But when you start reviewing, it's like you are sealing those loopholes. So if you took a bucket to the river and it had holes, that is what normally a student is doing if you're not reviewing. But when you start reviewing your study, is that you're You're taking materials and una seal mashimo za kusahau, una seal. So eventually when you go to the river, you will come back with at least half or full of what you went to get to the river. Yeah. And so that is what happens when you review. Review, you also have to understand, how do you do it? We can just say review your work, but if you leave it at that, then what does it mean? How do you do it practically? So at this juncture, allow me to go through active recall techniques. Active recall techniques. And I understand Daktari has covered this in our schools over and over again. Allow me to just go through them quickly, maybe for someone who maybe slept in the session. I have attended some and I find that some Kamaus come very tired. They try to concentrate, maybe they get half of what is taught. So now, what are the active techniques or active recall techniques we should be using to review what we study or to review what the teacher teaches in class? Number one is what we call, number one, we have to define first of what is an active recall. And I'll give a simple definition or simple analogy that anybody can get it, especially we are Gen Zs. Reading is like watching someone else do push-ups, okay? But recalling is when you do the push-ups yourself. I repeat, reading is like watching someone do some push-ups. But recalling is now when you stop watching them and you now get to do the push-ups. That is what recalling is, or active recall is. So instead of rereading, you close the book and try to retrieve info from the memory. It's hard, but that difficulty is what makes it work. You see, if you're studying some concept in chemistry, you close your book, take a piece of paper, start writing what you have learned. I know it becomes hard because you're wondering, what do I write? I can almost remember nothing. Perfect. That difficulty you're feeling at that very moment, that is the fuel you need. That is what makes it work. Yeah. I know sometimes maybe you may get, what do you call it? You may feel like you want to flip the page to just copy what you have. No, you give yourself like 30 minutes. Say, I will try in the next 30 minutes to write what I have read, to just test, am I understanding anything? And don't open your book to start copy pasting what you have in your notebooks or in your textbook. No, the essence of recall is to close your book and try and write word for word, or maybe a concept, maybe not even word for word, of what you have learned, to just make sure that you are retaining something. The number, or what maybe you can, when you go back to school, or maybe after this session, you can go to your maybe textbook, or maybe to your geography book, take a concept, study it for 20 minutes, then close the book. Take a piece of paper and write something down. And then that evaluates yourself. You do something called self-evaluation. You're testing yourself to see, how far can I go? How much can my brain take? Yeah. The second thing, which I know Daktari has covered in depth, is designing self-testing techniques, or what we call self-testing strategies. Hope you can hear me kidogo hapa, watoto kidogo ni kama wanapewa kiboko. What we call self-testing strategies. And what they are is, you turn your headings into questions. So I give a simple example. Instead of just writing causes of World War II, write it as, what were the causes of World War II? So now you've turned the topic you're studying into a question that can come in an exam setting. So you don't just write down notes. You make your notes look like exam papers, where all topics become questions and your notes become answers. That, I think, is very well understood. Apply this differently in all subjects. An example, if you're doing mathematics, you can solve problems without notes. In history, you can cut notes and rewrite main events for memory. In biology, you can decide to draw diagrams from scratch and label them without looking at the note, without looking at the textbook. So if you're trying to, what biology topic can I remember from high school? Let's say you're trying to remember, or maybe to study the plant or the leaf. Instead of drawing the leaf from the textbook and writing the parts of the leaf, you can decide to take the leaf or draw the leaf from scratch on your book and parts without going back to the textbook. So now you're not just recreating your textbook on your notebook, but you're actually now doing what we're calling active reading. You're not just copy pasting things from the KLB to your book, KLB to your book. No, you decide that today you're studying the leaf. You study the leaf from A to Z. Don't look at the textbook. Just try to see how much can you remember. Okay. If you have any question, kindly have them have them on the chat box. I will address them. Pardon on active recall can also use spaced repetition to reduce forgetting curve. Yeah, sure. I have a question concerning the forgetting curve. Let us say in a week, how many times you need to review? Can one review through questions, e.g. past papers, apart from discussing with them? I have a question. Sometimes remembering is tricky even after actually reviewing from time to time, and you forget. How do you cope it due to anxiety? Wonderful, wonderful. I see we are engaging. I'll come back to those questions. So this is how we build it slowly. You intentionally decide, you know what, I will no longer forget. It will not be like a one fixed quick thing that you do it once and you're good to go. It has to become a habit. And then now a habit becomes what you normally do, you know. So if maybe you tried this week and it did not work, maybe you're just forcing yourself to make it work. What you do is have some grace on yourself. Don't, you know, we have what we call stretch yourself to see your limit, but also don't overstretch, because now if you overstretch, it beats the purpose. Neuroscience is not like magic. You know, magic, you have to force things to work to please the people you are trying to perform to. But neuroscience, it's a science. It's like how we don't force gravity. You have to let it run into your system until it just sinks perfectly, right? Because I think sometimes we learn something and you're trying to implement it, but you're also trying to be mechanical about it. You cannot be mechanical about it. It has to be very much. It has to come natural. That's why you give it time, you cultivate on it. Eventually, you start seeing the results of neuroscience. I'm sure Dr. has given us examples of where he begins off with a student at Form 1, but maybe they start seeing results maybe towards the end term, because, you know, they have given it time to mature. You're giving time for these techniques to work. Yeah. I know sometimes if maybe you're trying to improve your performance and you're trying to improve maybe in your next exam, there's a tendency to maybe almost force it to work. I know, because I've also been a student. I know. But I think it is just some patience, and also we have God. I'm sure Dr. has also mentioned the power of prayer. So it's a combination of things. What we're doing in this session, I'm not going to cover everything, but I'm covering the segment that I'm able to cover in this given time. Now, the second thing we do, which I think I've seen in the questions, is spaced repetition. Spaced repetition. Now, what is spaced repetition? Think of it this way, as a review calendar. Okay, so every time you review, it tells your brain, hey, this is important, don't delete it. That is what spaced repetition is. You're giving your brain a memo of, hey, listen up, this information is very important, don't forget it. That is what spaced repetition is. And I'm sure we have designed a very good structure of doing this in our study guide that will be coming to your desk very in a few. So you will see how we have broken it down practically for you to be able to move with it and run with it. But for the sake of this conversation today, think of it this way. Here's a pattern. Day one, you learn, let's say you learn what? The most concept, day one. Day two, you do a quick review. And you will come to see in the study guide what a quick review is, because a quick review is not like reading your notes, rereading your notes. A quick review is going through the pages, seeing, okay, this is what I learned. Okay, this is what I learned. Okay, that is just a quick review. Day 4, again, come and do another quick review. And then day 17, day 14, day 30, and you see what you're saying is we're defining quick reviews as short, intense, active sessions of reminding yourself what you learned. So I know you're thinking, I have 8 lessons during the day. Each is 40 minutes. How can I do a quick review of all of them before I sleep? Let me tell you, imagine you can do it. We calculated with Daktari in one of our brainstorming sessions, and we saw if you take 2 hours 40 minutes every evening, you can quickly review all the things you have covered during the day, each for 5 minutes. But then you maybe some days you have a PE, so you say now you don't have to review a PE. Maybe sometimes you have a, there are things, maybe the people for set book had come, so there's nothing to review there. But maybe you also have areas of weaknesses. Maybe your mathematics is on top, so you don't necessarily need to give mathematics that time. But maybe your geography needs maybe 15 minutes of review. So you see, we say if you're to give every subject at least 5 minutes, that is 40 minutes times 5, around, when you divide it, or maybe 5 minutes times 8, or whatever, you will see that you may not need like 2 hours to review everything. If you say that you have 3 hours for every evening prep, and you decide that 1 hour 15 minutes is for just reviewing, I'm not doing assignments, I'm not making noise, I am purely going through my notebooks for the day. This is what the teacher learned from the first minute to the last minute. So now if you do that, then you decide that on Friday I will go through the same reviews, especially, again, remember what I'm saying, for the subjects that are giving you trouble. Now, we said you can, and a practical example is how you can build a review schedule. Think of it this way. On Monday, you decide to study subject A, okay? Let's say mathematics. On Tuesday, you decide to study subject B. So you're studying subject B, but you're going to do a review of subject A. So maybe subject B is English. You decide to study today English, but towards the end, review what you studied yesterday about mathematics. So you're not forgetting what you did yesterday. You're not saying, you know what, I'll do what needs to be done today. What I did yesterday, I'm okay. And allow me to just repeat myself maybe for the last time. Reviewing doesn't mean rereading. Because I know when I'm saying reviewing and I'm saying review all the subjects, maybe one of you is thinking, you cannot be serious. There's no way I'm going to review geography, mathematics, physics, there's no way. But you see, reviewing is not rereading. You can take a chemistry book and review for 5 minutes. Quickly, you're seeing what concepts were taught today, what solutions were, what I have a problem. You're not doing assignments, you are just review. It's just like review, view. The word view means see. Yeah, review means receive. Just go through your note and just receive what you did during the day. Now, we're almost coming to an end, but allow me to mention something very interesting that I tried, or at least I used in my day. What I've also heard Dr. talk about, what we call hacks or mnemonics. Those acronyms we come up with to remember things. And I want to give you an assignment. Transition network, I can see you're very active. How does memorizing content affect permanent remembrance? Does attitude affect remembering content? It does 100%. If you have a bad attitude towards your mathematics will not math. So I know Dr. will answer some of these questions, but allow me to just mention something about acronyms. I want to look you in the eye. Let me put myself on full screen here. I want you to let me take off from the stream. Good. I want to do this. You're on holiday, right? AI, ChatGPT, Gemini, all these platforms. You see the concepts that are giving you trouble? Go on AI and tell AI, give me acronyms I can use to remember the mole concept. Okay? You're at home, you have devices, you have laptops. Instead of just watching the latest series on Netflix, today after this call, just go on AI, write this, transition network, write this. Hello AI, if you want to be besties. Hello AI, give me an acronym I can use to remember the moles concept and make it friendly and easy to remember. I did this before this session, and you see me, I'm not doing any exam. I had an example of acronym PIG, P-I-G-S. Pressure is greater when smaller, which means it's a fun way to remember the Boyle's law. So when pressure increases, volume decreases. Another one is the fat cut. From anode to cathode, you're trying to remember the direction of electron flow in a battery. So you just say fat cut, and you have solved that concept for life. Of course, we have the other one we call SOHCAHTOA. I think we all know that. We have another zone AI called SUVAT, SUVAT. The displacement, initial velocity, final velocity, acceleration, time, or FAT. Force is equals to mass times acceleration times time. A quick way to link force, mass, and acceleration. Or Mrs. Chen. You're trying to remember the types of or the forms of energy: mechanical, radiant, sound, chemical, heat, electrical, nuclear. And that is Mrs. Chen. These are things I've just used AI. Quick up. I see Brett NND is asking which AI. Any AI. If you use ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok on Twitter, whatever AI you're using, just give it. The value of AI is not what it gives, it's the kind of questions you're asking it. So if you ask them, you get the right answers. Okay. Keep the questions coming. Dr. will address them towards the end. Now, when you integrate all these things, how do you make them now practical? You can say that I'll be using 15 minutes active recall every single day, or 20 minutes or 1 hour, whatever time you're able to play with. And then I will use 5 minutes to review, 5 minutes of spaced repetition, or maybe 25, 30 minutes. I know you have like 4 hours of a prep in the evening, depending on the school you're at. And so if you divide your hour and you say maybe out of these 4 or 3 hours I have, 60% I'll use them for active recall and spaced repetition and coming up with synonyms, acronyms, mnemonics, in short. So that is like 1 hour 30 minutes. And then the other 1 hour 30 minutes, now you do your corrections, because Dr. spoken about that a number of times. You do your assignments, you do your group discussions, but you decide, you know what, this 1 hour 25 minutes or this 1 hour 30 minutes, it's purely for practicing active recall and revise and spaced repetition. That's it. Now in the comment section, I want you to tell me which one technique are you going to try today after this conversation. What is that one thing that you've had in today's call and you're like, yes, I have to try this one? Okay. And to wrap it up with how the Tide teaches us is the best way to keep whatever you have learned today in mind is to teach it to someone. So I want you to think of someone in your mind. Who can you wake up tomorrow in the morning and share this with? Maybe your younger brother, maybe your classmate who did not make it to come to this conversation. But if you share this with one person, you have solidified it in yourself. It's like give one, buy one, get 2 free, get 1 free. So you have bought this knowledge for yourself, but when you give it to somebody else, you solidify it in your heart. Because the value of knowledge is not in hearing it, it's in the doing. I was reading the Bible and they were saying that you somewhere in the Bible, you profess to know God, but to deny his works. So you say you love God, but you're still stealing, you're still lying. So what is the value of knowing him? There's no value at all. And so I think that is it for my conversation, or for my part of the conversation today. Hope you have enjoyed it. If you have learned something, just tell me, Doita, I've learned something. And all the questions I'm seeing, Daktari is about to address them. Thank you very much. Karibu sana, Daktari.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mr. Thweta, for taking us through this. And dear sons and daughters, I was still following everything that Mr. Thweta was taking you through. From my end, Mr. Thweta, I'm not quite able to pick the questions, but maybe what we can do is that we can try and see. What am I being told? Sorry. Oh yeah, there are questions that are being picked over here. They are being picked over here. So maybe I can even have a look at that. Just direct. Sorry, let me see if I can be able to tackle the questions within the time that we have left. Yeah, so maybe I can, for the interest of time, I can say we don't have so much time on this, but allow me to pick a few of these, but don't worry about this. What I'll do is that I'll go through all these questions, and again, once I go through them, I'm going to do a recording of the same. Then you can always check. You can always check our YouTube. Yeah, so I'm going to do a recording of everything that you'll have talked about. Also now mentioning you by name. Yeah, so that is one thing that I should be able to get back to. Yeah, but allow me to see what I'm able to answer. How does memorizing content affect permanent remembrance? It's very easy, because like I mentioned earlier, how we create neural paths in our brain. If you walk a certain, if this is a field somewhere, then you walk using you move from one corner to the other, repeat the same movement on the same path. What usually happens is that where that grass is, it withers and a path is created. And basically what you're talking about is that this can only come once you repeat. Once you keep repeating, that repetition is what brings about the permanent retention, because you have repeated and repeated and repeated. And if you can remember a clip that we shared earlier about how the brain creates the neural paths, it actually happens through repetition. And I actually want to use an example that is so clear. Today you don't have an issue with the alphabetical order. It is through the repetition that you kept on doing over and over that today has actually created that what we call the permanent remembrance. So basically, it is through, and remember, I've also come to learn one thing, that the more you repeat, the more it doesn't get very interesting. But again, when you're very, very sure that the more you repeat, the more you don't get the psyche to keep repeating, what usually happens is that have it at the back of your mind that it's not about the joy of repeating, but the bigger picture of what we are calling the permanent retention. Then there's something else. How is remembering content effective in being ready for any impromptu? How is remembering content effective in being ready for any impromptu cut? If I may try to get this question, is that when you know something, it doesn't matter what time. Like now, if I ask you to wake at 2 a.m. to recite for me the alphabetical order, it doesn't even matter how much prepared you are. And that's what you're actually talking about. Through this spaced repetition that ends up giving us that permanent retention, this is what helps us, that even if an impromptu cut comes, now that you have kept on repeating and the neural paths have already been created in your mind, and that permanent retention has actually become your beat, then that is what makes us remain totally on point. Then does postponing revising affect remembering content, and how? Yes, it does. Remember, the brain does not like keeping information. By the way, that's something that you may need to understand, that the brain does not like keeping information. So if you don't give it a reason to want to keep it, what happens? That information is captured by the brain, thrown back to the archives, that which we call forgetting. So what are we saying? Postponement of anything gives the brain a reason to want to just take it to the archives, and that is exactly that's exactly what helps us to be able to understand that anything you learn, we need that permanent consistency in order to do it right. Otherwise, good friends, I'm very sure because I only have like 2 more minutes to go. I'll ask us to keep visiting our YouTube. Keep visiting our YouTube. If you just go to Patrick Nyaga, you're just going to get a lot of these questions and also the answers that are given. And you're also going to meet quite a number of questions that have also been answered from other students in other schools and in different programs. Otherwise, for now, allow me to ask you kindly, feel very free to subscribe to that is Patrick Nyaga, the YouTube Patrick Nyaga. Keep on subscribing and also liking and doing the because with that, then it keeps us now running and being able now to have each other, even if we are not really have not quite set this kind of a setup for us to have the sessions. And also for the ones of us that could be interested, we just completed the first cohort of the 10-hour program, and we'll be starting another one tomorrow. So just in case you are interested in joining the 10-hour program, then this, of course, you can be very sure that one will not be as rushed as this one. Then feel free to just write the name interested to 0722 633 840 0722 633 840. And for the interest of time, allow me to really thank our host today, that is Mr. Thuita, for also taking us through the program, and also each and every one of you, the parents that are on board, my sons and daughters that are on board. I sincerely assure you that we will do everything. These classes are pro bono. We are not charging for this, and I want to believe this bit that you've been the last 1 hour that we've actually been together, we've been able to get something out of that. Otherwise, we can actually close with a short prayer, and that is a grace from all of us. So let's begin the grace. And may the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the most Holy Spirit be with us now and forevermore. Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. Keep well and enjoy your dinner and your holiday too. And also feel free to also keep asking questions. We'll be able to answer and walk you the journey. Thank you so much, Mr. Thuita. Thank you so much, each and every one of us. Asanteni.
Thank you. You're very much welcome. Good night to you too.
Indeed.
Okay.